My name is Isla Noor and I am 19 years old. I had just watched my parents suspend my schooling on Christmas Eve, until I apologized to their golden boy, like my future was a gift they could wrap, return, and replace. The tree lights blinked while my mother counted my sins, and my father stared past me like I was a stranger living in his house. I should have begged. I almost did. But in my coat pocket was a letter I hadn't opened yet, sealed, official, and heavy as a loaded truth. My chest burned with humiliation, my throat tightened with rage, and I realized Christmas wasn't ending, it was beginning. Before I continue, tell me your country and the time right now. The smell of cinnamon and burnt candles should have felt like home. It didn't. My mother's voice sliced through the living room, sharp enough to silence even the carols from the TV. Isla, sit down. We're not doing this again. I stood frozen near the staircase, still in my school jacket, my backpack heavy with assignments I'd never get to submit. My father adjusted his glasses like he was about to deliver a verdict. Sammy sat across the room, legs stretched, smirk half hidden behind a mug of cocoa. He always looked comfortable in moments that shattered me. We've decided, my mother said, her tone cold and rehearsed. You're not going back to school next semester. The words hit harder than I expected. My brain struggled to translate them into meaning. What? You heard me, she continued. Your schooling is suspended until you learn some humility, and apologize to your brother for what you said last week. Sammy set his mug down with the precision of someone enjoying control. It's fine, Mom. She doesn't respect anyone but herself. Respect. The word stung like a slap. I wanted to laugh, but it came out as a choke. I didn't do anything wrong. Enough. My father's hand rose, palm outward. You will not speak over your mother. You embarrassed this family. You've been acting out for months, challenging authority, starting fights. I didn't start anything, I whispered. He leaned forward. Then why does everyone say you did? Because Sammy told them to. Because lies travel faster when they come from the golden boy. But saying that only made me sound jealous. I'd learned that lesson early. I glanced at the Christmas tree, twinkling lights, perfect ornaments, fake warmth. Every piece of it bought with the illusion of family. Underneath, wrapped boxes waited, neat and sparkling, while I stood there being unwrapped and exposed. My mother sighed dramatically, rubbing her temples. We raised you better than this, Isla. We sacrificed for your education, your future, and this is how you repay us? By attacking your brother on social media? I didn't attack him. You just what? She snapped. Told everyone he cheated? Accused him of stealing from you? You humiliated your own blood. The room blurred. My hands trembled. Sammy didn't deny it, he didn't need to. His silence was the perfect lie. My father's voice dropped, deep and final. Until you fix this, you're done with school. We're not paying another cent. I stepped back, heart thudding so loud it drowned the carols. You can't do that. We can, he said calmly. And we will. Sammy folded his arms, fake sympathy dripping from his voice. You know, you could just apologize and end all this. Apologize for what? For being smarter? For noticing the double standards? For existing in a house that only had room for one child worth loving? The cousins, uncles, and family friends gathered for the holiday watched quietly, pretending it was an awkward argument, not a public execution. Dad, please, I tried one last time. It's Christmas Eve. Exactly, my mother said coldly. A time for reflection. You should think about how you've hurt this family. I felt the floor tilt. The warmth of the fire mocked me, my reflection flickering in the window, small, disposable, out of place. Sammy leaned back, his smirk growing. Maybe next year she'll learn gratitude. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break every fragile decoration in that house. Instead, I stood perfectly still, memorizing their faces, their calm cruelty, their satisfaction. The silence stretched. Then my father stood up, slow and deliberate. He walked to the hallway, grabbed my backpack, and held it out like evidence. "Pack your things," he said. "You're not sleeping here tonight." The world narrowed to that one sentence. The fire crackled. My mother didn't blink. Sammy smiled. And Christmas Eve ended with the sound of my own heartbeat breaking. My father grabs my bag and says, "Pack. You're not sleeping here tonight." Sammy always made cruelty look effortless. When I was 7, he told me snowflakes melted faster if you were poor. I cried, and he laughed so hard my mother came running, only to scold me for being too sensitive. That pattern never stopped, it just learned how to wear adult clothes. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, suitcase half-zipped, listening to their voices echo down the hallway. The house looked like a picture from a family magazine, garlands, candles, the smell of turkey, but it felt like a theater where I'd been cut from the cast. Downstairs, my mother's voice was calm now, the way she spoke when the storm had passed, because she always believed her emotions were righteous, and mine were crimes. "She'll understand tomorrow," she said. "A night outside will teach her respect." Sammy's chuckle followed. "She won't last till morning. She'll come crawling back. You'll see." My throat burned. I pressed a hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. The suitcase zipper rasped like a wound tearing open. I remembered the first time he lied for convenience, when we were 12 and he broke my father's antique watch. He told them I'd been snooping, and before I could even defend myself, I was grounded for 2 weeks. He didn't even blink when I cried. By the time we were teenagers, he'd perfected it, guilt as performance, charm as weapon. He'd help with chores when guests came, call my mother angel, hug my father in front of relatives, then vanish when there was real work to do. But if I forgot to say thank you once, I was labeled ungrateful. It wasn't that they didn't see who he was, they didn't want to. Sammy was their dream, the golden boy, the son who could do no wrong. And me? I was the glitch in their story, the daughter who dared to question him. When I earned my scholarship, my mother told people it was because of good luck. When Sammy won a minor debate trophy, she posted about his natural brilliance. Even at dinner, she served him first. My father would ask about Sammy's grades before mine. I used to think I was imagining it. Then I stopped thinking, it hurt too much. The memory of last week hit me like a slap. The argument that started it all. He'd borrowed, no, stolen, my saved tuition refund temporarily to buy himself a designer jacket. I confronted him. He said he'd return it when he felt like it. When I told my parents, my mother said, "Why are you always keeping score?" That day, I snapped. I told him he'd always been a liar, a fraud in a golden frame. He smiled and said, "You're just jealous I'm the favorite." He was right about one thing. Not about jealousy, about the truth no one wanted to say aloud. I stared at my reflection now in the mirror across from the bed. Same face, same family name, but no home. Downstairs, laughter floated up. They'd resumed their holiday meal. My father poured wine, Sammy made jokes. The world didn't stop just because I was being erased. I picked up my phone and scrolled through old photos, birthdays where I stood at the edge, family dinners where I wasn't in the center of a single frame. Even the wallpaper of our family group chat had been changed to Sammy's graduation photo. I thought of my friends, how I'd always downplayed my family's favoritism like it was normal. "He's just older," I'd say. "They worry about him more." But deep down, I knew, their love wasn't divided, it was conditional. The knock on my door startled me. My mother stepped in, her expression soft, false, rehearsed. "Isla," she said gently. "It doesn't have to be like this. Just apologize. You know how your brother is, he's sensitive." "Sensitive?" I whispered. "He humiliated me in front of everyone." "He's still your brother. So that means I have to apologize for his lies?" Her smile thinned. "It means you have to keep this family together." There it was again, the unspoken rule, sacrifice yourself to protect his image. I wanted to ask when anyone ever protected mine. I won't, I said. She sighed and stepped closer, her perfume thick with control. You think you're strong because of that scholarship? You think the world owes you fairness? It doesn't. Your father worked for this family's name, and you're dragging it through the mud for pride? Her tone softened dangerously. Say you're sorry, Isla. Just say it, and we'll forget all this. For a split second, I almost did. I wanted my home back, my school, my routine, my safety. Then I saw Sammy in the doorway, leaning, watching, smirking. If you loved this family, my mother whispered, you'd apologize right now. Her words landed like a chain around my throat. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My mother whispers, if you loved this family, you'd apologize right now. I didn't apologize. I couldn't. The words jammed behind my teeth like they were never meant to exist. My mother's expression turned to ice, the kind that burns worse than fire. Then you've made your choice, she said, her voice calm, cruel, final. Minutes later, I was outside. The door closed behind me with a dull thud, followed by the metallic click of the lock, soft, deliberate, and absolute. I stood on the porch, clutching my bag, staring at the wreath that said peace on earth. My breath rose in clouds that caught the glow of the porch light, then vanished like everything else that was supposed to last. For the first few seconds, I expected someone to come after me. A call. A hand. A sign of regret. Nothing. Inside, laughter resumed. The sound floated through the windows like a ghost I could never join. I walked down the front steps, each one heavier than the last, until I reached the street. The cold bit through my coat, sharp and invasive. The neighborhood sparkled with warmth, families in matching pajamas, children pressing their faces to windows, dogs wearing red ribbons. It all looked like a commercial for a life I'd never owned. I pulled my phone from my pocket, thumb trembling as I scrolled through contacts. My aunt, maybe. She'd always been kind. I called her. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. The cold deepened. My hands felt like stone. I texted my friend Lena. They kicked me out. I watched the message turn blue, then read, then disappear under the glow of typing, before it vanished entirely. No reply. I sat on the curb near the closed bakery at the corner, the same place where I used to buy chocolate croissants before exams. I hadn't realized how much of my life was built on the assumption that I could always go home afterward. My phone buzzed, but it wasn't Lena. It was the university portal. A notification. Payment overdue. Enrollment suspended pending tuition confirmation. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The tuition money my parents controlled, frozen, inaccessible, gone. The world wasn't just cold, it was silent. I tilted my head back, staring at the night sky. The stars looked bright, but distant, like people who could see everything and still do nothing. For years, I'd played by their rules. Be polite. Be grateful. Be smaller than Sammy so no one feels threatened. And still, they found ways to shrink me further. A car drove by, headlights washing over me like interrogation lights. The driver didn't stop. Why would they? I didn't even look like someone who belonged anywhere anymore. My fingers ached as I typed a message to my father. Can we talk? It delivered. It didn't show red. Then, a new notification pinged through, different tone, unfamiliar sender. Message from Estate Law Office. At first, I thought it was spam. My thumb hovered over delete. But something made me pause. The subject line read. Notice regarding the will of Mr. F. Noor. My chest tightened. Noor. My surname. Ours. For a moment, confusion replaced fear. My family never talked about relatives, especially not anyone connected to my father's side. I didn't know of Mr. F. Noor. I opened the message. It was brief, clinical, official. Dear Ms. Isla Noor. We are attempting to reach you in relation to the estate of the late Mr. F. Noor. Please confirm receipt and contact our office at your earliest convenience. Legal documentation requires your signature. It included a phone number. A seal. A signature line that looked painfully real. I reread it twice, pulse quickening with something I didn't dare name. Hope? No, something quieter, curiosity mixed with dread. Who was he? Why me? And why hadn't my parents said anything? I looked up at the row of glowing houses, the windows full of laughter I couldn't touch, and realized something strange. Maybe being thrown out wasn't exile. Maybe it was the start of distance, enough distance to see the truth. I pulled my knees to my chest, staring at the message again, letting the cold settle into me until it became part of the moment. For the first time that night, I didn't cry. Because suddenly, there was a question louder than the pain. What if my family wasn't just cruel? What if they were hiding something? The phone buzzed again. Another line appeared beneath the message. Please do not inform other family members until the appointment is confirmed. A shiver ran down my spine. The bakery clock struck midnight. Christmas morning. I was alone, disowned, and possibly, unknowingly, someone else's secret heir. A notification pings through, message from Estate Law Office. By dawn, the streetlights dimmed, and frost glittered across the pavement like broken glass. My fingers were stiff, my lips cracked from the cold. The night had blurred into something unreal, and the message from the estate office still pulsed in my mind like a heartbeat I didn't trust. I hadn't slept. Instead, I sat in the park near our neighborhood, watching the sunrise climb over roofs that weren't mine anymore. My phone battery was down to 10%. I could either call the law office or crawl back home. In the end, exhaustion won over pride. I walked back down the familiar street, my shoes crunching over thin ice. Every step felt heavier, like gravity itself was punishing me for trying to exist without permission. When I reached the gate, my body froze. The windows were lit again, the smell of coffee spilling into the cold air. My heart betrayed me. It hoped someone had been waiting, that maybe they'd realized what they'd done. The front door creaked open before I could knock. My father stood there, arms crossed, face unreadable. So, you're back. I nodded slowly. I just need to talk. His silence stretched. Then he turned his head toward the kitchen. She's here, he called out. My mother appeared, immaculate as always, wearing an apron that said family first, a gift I'd given her years ago. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile people wear at funerals. Well, she said. Are you ready to apologize? I looked past her. Sammy sat at the breakfast table, scrolling his phone, a plate of pancakes in front of him like a prize. He didn't even look up. I didn't come to fight, I said softly. I just want to go back to school. Then you know what to do, my father replied. I wanted to scream, to remind them that education wasn't a bargaining chip, that love shouldn't have conditions, but my voice cracked instead. I didn't lie about him. He took my money. Sammy finally looked up, feigning hurt. You really can't stop blaming me, huh? Maybe if you weren't so bitter. Enough, my father barked. The table rattled from the impact of his hand. We are done with this nonsense. My mother gestured toward me. Isla, sweetheart, this family has suffered enough embarrassment because of your stubbornness. You think you're the only one who's hurt? Look at your brother. Look at your father. I did look. My father's eyes were stone. Sammy's were smug. They didn't look hurt, they looked victorious. Just say you're sorry, my mother said, folding her arms. Say it properly. Properly? I echoed. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. You know what that means. You look your brother in the eye and tell him you regret everything. You tell him you were wrong. I wasn't wrong. Her smile faltered. Then you're ungrateful. I felt heat rise to my face, not from shame but fury. You're punishing me for telling the truth. We're teaching you respect, my father cut in. You've embarrassed this family enough. If you cared about your future, you'd stop talking and start fixing what you broke. What I broke? My voice shook. You're the ones. Watch your tone, he snapped. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. My chest hurt. I wasn't even crying, there was no space left for tears. Just hollow, dry ache. Sammy leaned back in his chair and smirked. You heard them, Isla. Just say it. I forgive you. Something in me cracked. He said it like he was God himself, granting me the privilege of existence. Like forgiveness was his to give for a crime he'd committed. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my voice from breaking. You want me to apologize for something you did? My father slammed his palm down again. You're crossing the line. I looked around the kitchen, the walls I'd scrubbed as a child, the fridge covered in Sammy's achievements, not one photo of mine left. Even the framed Family of the Year award from his school stood on the counter like proof that my erasure was complete. I thought of the estate email again, of a lawyer's message sitting unread in my inbox, like a thread leading somewhere beyond this suffocation. But I was trapped in this moment. In this house. In this family's performance of love. I swallowed the words that wanted to spill out, you'll regret this. Instead, I whispered, fine. My mother's eyes softened instantly. Good girl. But I wasn't apologizing. Not yet. I needed warmth, food, sleep. I needed a plan. So I played along. I'm sorry, I said flatly, looking at Sammy's face without blinking. He tilted his head, smiling. Say it like you mean it, or you're done. His words slithered into me, soft and venomous. My father crossed his arms again. Do it properly. I closed my eyes, inhaled, and forced myself to bow my head, not out of remorse, but out of strategy. I'm sorry, Sammy. The air in the room shifted, satisfaction. They believed it. My mother smiled wider. See? That wasn't so hard. But it was. It was harder than begging for air underwater. They returned to their breakfast like nothing had happened, the argument already erased from their memories. I stood there in the kitchen, invisible again, my apology a currency they'd already spent. The humiliation burned through me, but beneath it, something else flickered, resolve. They thought they'd won. They hadn't noticed the email waiting quietly in my inbox, the message that would one day undo everything they built on control. Sammy leans in and murmurs, say it like you mean it, or you're done. The kitchen smelled like syrup and victory. Sammy's victory. My fake apology had worked, at least, that's what they believed. But if peace was supposed to feel like this, then maybe war had been kinder. I sat at the far end of the table, untouched toast on my plate, as my parents discussed the next steps in my redemption. They spoke about me as if I were a problematic employee under review. My father folded his newspaper. Now that you've realized your mistake, we expect better behavior. Behavior? I asked quietly. Yes, my mother said. No more gossiping about family matters. No more social media drama. No more talking back to your brother. I almost laughed. Social media drama? I'd posted a single sentence, silence protects the liar, not the truth. They knew it was about him. Sammy always knew when the mirror was held up. Sammy smirked. She likes to play victim online. Let's see how long her performance lasts. I turned toward him, my voice steady. You stole my money. He didn't flinch. You mean the jacket? That was a gift. You said you'd help me before. I never said that. My mother's voice sliced in. Enough. He apologized for that. When? I asked. Her lips thinned. Just now. In his heart. In his heart. That was the script, his intentions mattered more than my evidence. I pushed my plate away. I need my phone back. The school emailed me about fees. My mother exchanged a look with my father. We'll handle that later. I can handle it myself. That's the problem, my father said, sipping his coffee. You think independence means defiance. It's time you understood balance. Family decisions come before personal desires. Personal desires. That's what they called my education. I'm not asking for anything, I said. Just access to my own tuition. Sammy laughed under his breath. You really don't get it, do you? This house runs on trust. You broke it. Trust? I repeated. You forged my signature on that withdrawal form. The laughter stopped. The silence afterward felt radioactive. My father's gaze hardened. Watch your words. I saw the form, I said, my pulse pounding. My name, my handwriting, copied. Who did it? Sammy raised an eyebrow, pretending confusion. Maybe you did it yourself. I froze. The audacity was breathtaking. My mother exhaled through her nose like she was calming herself. Isla, this obsession with blaming your brother is dangerous. You're turning into someone bitter. We're trying to save you from yourself. Save me. That word again. As if exile, silence, and humiliation were therapy sessions for my soul. I pushed my chair back. I'm going to the university office tomorrow. I'll fix this myself. My father's tone dropped to that deadly calm that always preceded punishment. You will not go anywhere until we say so. You can't stop me. He smiled, cold, deliberate. We already did. He reached into his folder and slid a printed sheet across the counter. My name was at the top. My stomach tightened as I read it. Student withdrawal request. Status, pending processing. My signature. Not mine. Perfectly forged. The world blurred around the edges. My voice came out in a whisper. You forged this. My father leaned back in his chair. We acted in your best interest. You're clearly not thinking straight, and education costs money. Maybe a break will help you reflect. Sammy nodded sympathetically. It's for your own good, Isla. You've been unstable lately. I stared at him. You forged my name. He smiled. Prove it. The words hit harder than any slap. Because he knew I couldn't, not yet. My mother placed a gentle hand over mine, her tone suddenly syrup-sweet. We'll talk about it after Christmas. Don't ruin today with arguments. The world won't end if you miss one semester. My body trembled, not from anger, but from something worse, realization. They weren't doing this to teach me. They were doing it because they could. I stood up, my chair scraping the tile. I'm not staying here. My father's voice followed, low and sharp. You walk out again, and don't come back. I turned, ready to reply, but then I saw the look in my mother's eyes, pride, not pain. They wanted me to leave. It made their story cleaner. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a goodbye. I walked out through the back door, my breath visible against the freezing air. My hand shook as I reached for my phone, still gone. They had everything. My identity, my money, my voice. But they didn't know about the message I'd saved. That email, the one from the estate office. My only remaining link to a world beyond their control. I looked up at the cloudy sky, cold rain starting to fall, and whispered to myself, they think they own me. For the first time, I didn't believe it. My father slides a printed form across the counter, a withdrawal request. The back door slammed behind me, and I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I knew what came next, silence. Always silence. My parents were masters of punishment by absence. The rain had started properly now, cold needles against my cheeks. I walked without thinking, my shoes soaking through as I followed the narrow road that led to the bus stop. My body was trembling, but my mind was strangely clear. I'd lost everything, my school access, my tuition, my home. And yet, under all the fear, something small and electric was awake. I wasn't broken. Not yet. When I reached the bench, the wind howled through the trees, scattering bits of wrapping paper that had escaped neighborhood trash cans. Merry Christmas written on pieces of trash, ironic poetry. I sat down, hugging my knees. My reflection in the bus shelter glass didn't look like me anymore. My eyes were swollen, my hair damp, my jacket clinging to me like dead weight. The world around me moved as if on another timeline, families driving by, their cars glowing from within, laughter audible through rolled-up windows. I was invisible to all of it. A part of me wanted to scream at the passing cars, "Stop. I exist. Someone, please, see me." But I didn't. I just sat there, trembling, the lump in my throat turning to nausea. I thought about calling my school's office again. Maybe someone from the bursars department was working holiday hours. I pulled out my phone, now at 5%, and dialed the number. The line rang twice, then went to voicemail. "Our offices are closed for Christmas break. Please leave a message." My voice cracked as I whispered into the phone, "This is Eleanor. My enrollment's been suspended without my consent. Please call me back." I hung up, my hands shaking so violently that I almost dropped the phone. No one was coming. The bus arrived half an hour later, mostly empty. I climbed in, paid in coins, and sat at the back. The windows fogged instantly from my breath. The driver didn't ask questions, his eyes were tired, uninterested, mercifully detached. As the bus pulled away, the city blurred into streaks of gray and gold. The bus hissed to a stop near the downtown square. I got off, the rain easing into drizzle. I found a coffee shop still open, its lights soft and warm. I walked in, dripping wet, earning a few curious glances. The barista's smile faltered when she saw me, clothes soaked, hair sticking to my face, but she didn't say anything cruel. "One black coffee," I said, sliding the last few coins from my pocket. When she handed me the cup, the heat made me shudder. I sat in a corner booth near the window, hands wrapped around the cup like it was a lifeline. The warmth hurt, it reminded me I could still feel. I pulled my phone out again. 1%. The estate email still sat there, unread beyond the first line. "Please confirm receipt." I clicked reply and typed with numb fingers. "I confirm. Please tell me what this is about." Then my phone died. I stared at the black screen, heartbeat slowing, fear rising. Outside, snow began to fall over the street, thin flakes turning the city into a blur of white. Somewhere in the distance, I heard church bells. The world was celebrating while I sat in exile, stripped of everything but my name, and even that felt fragile. I thought about calling Sammy's bluff. Going to the police, reporting the forgery. But I could already hear my parents' voices in my head. "Family matters stay private. Don't ruin our name. No one will believe you." And maybe they were right. Who would believe a girl disowned on Christmas Eve? The clock above the counter struck 7. The barista turned the open sign to closed. I took one last sip, the coffee now cold and bitter, and stepped back into the storm. The streets were emptier now. The silence deeper. Every building seemed to hold light except the ones I passed. I found a dry spot under a bookstore awning and sat again. My bag felt heavier than before. Inside, my textbooks, my sketchpad, my scholarship documents, reminders of a life I was no longer allowed to touch. The rain washed down the pavement, carrying glitter from broken ornaments. My eyes followed it until everything blurred together, light, water, and memory. Then, through the hum of the storm, my phone vibrated. I startled, it shouldn't have, it was dead. But when I looked, the screen flickered on for a second, ghost-like, just enough to display one new notification that must have slipped in before the battery collapsed. Text message, urgent, regarding a will and your name. I blinked. The words were still there. I hadn't imagined them. A will. My name. The same law office. For the first time in years, the fear in my chest felt like fuel. Maybe the universe was watching after all, not to comfort me, but to hand me a weapon. I pressed the phone to my heart, whispering, "Whoever you are, I'm ready." The text reads, "Urgent, regarding a will and your name." The next morning, I woke up on the floor of the tiny 24-hour library downtown. They hadn't kicked me out. I must have looked too pathetic to bother with. My neck ached, my clothes still damp from the night before, but I didn't care. The message had replayed in my head all night. Urgent, regarding a will and your name. It didn't make sense. No one in my family had ever mentioned any distant relatives, especially not anyone with money or property. My parents always said we came from humble beginnings, though they lived like royalty in a house too big for gratitude. I borrowed a stranger's charger from across the reading room and plugged in my phone. When it finally powered on, I saw the message again, this time followed by a missed call and a voicemail. I played it. "Good morning, Ms. Noor. This is Daniel Shaw from Shaw and Breyer Estate Law. We've been attempting to contact you regarding the late Mr. Farid Noor. His estate listed you as a beneficiary. Please call back before noon, we're finalizing the reading of the will today." Farid Noor. The name hit like a ghost. Farid. My father's older brother. I remembered hearing that name once, whispered, poisoned, when I was small. My mother had said, "Don't ever bring him up. He betrayed the family." And now, apparently, he'd remembered me in his will. I called back immediately. My fingers shook as the line rang. "Shaw and Breyer Law Offices, this is Daniel," a calm voice answered. "Hi, this is Isla Noor. I think you left me a message about a will?" His tone shifted instantly, professional but gentle. "Yes, Ms. Noor. Thank you for returning the call. I appreciate your promptness. May I confirm your date of birth?" I gave it. He paused for a moment, typing. "Excellent. You are listed as a named party. Are you able to come into our downtown office today?" "Today?" "Yes. Ideally before 2 o'clock. The other attendees have been notified." "Other attendees?" My stomach twisted. My parents? Sammy? Were they part of this too? I forced my voice steady. Who else is attending?" "I'm not at liberty to disclose that until the session begins," he replied, his tone neutral but kind. "I'll need you to bring 2 forms of identification and, if possible, avoid discussing this matter with anyone until the meeting." "Why?" A short pause. "Because preliminary inheritance disputes are often complicated when families are involved. It's in your best interest to hear everything directly from me first." I understood. Maybe not the legal reasoning, but the instinct behind it. He was warning me without saying the words. "I'll be there," I said quietly. "Excellent," he replied. "Take your time, but don't be late." "And, Ms. Noor?" "Yes?" He hesitated, voice softening. "Congratulations may not be the right word in these circumstances, but I'll just say this, it's important you're present today." The line clicked dead, leaving me with a heartbeat that wouldn't calm down. The bus ride to the law office felt unreal. Outside, the world was glittering again, post-holiday calm, shoppers carrying returns, children tugging on mittens. I sat near the window, trying to steady my breathing. My father's words from the night before replayed in my head, "You walk out again, and don't come back." Fine. Maybe I wouldn't. I stared at my reflection in the window, tired eyes, damp hair, a version of myself that had stopped waiting for rescue. The bus dropped me near the financial district. I followed the address Daniel had texted me, turning corners until I found a narrow building made of glass and white stone. The sign outside read, "Shaw and Breyer Estate Law. Confidential Asset and Probate Services." I hesitated at the door. I looked nothing like the kind of person who belonged in a place like this. My shoes were still damp, my coat too thin, my eyes still swollen. But the receptionist smiled the moment I stepped in, like I wasn't a stray at all. "Good morning, Ms. Noor," she asked. My heart skipped. "Yes. Mr. Shaw is expecting you. Would you like some water?" Water. The simplest thing, but it almost undid me. "Yes, please," I whispered. She led me to a waiting area lined with soft leather chairs and shelves full of legal books I couldn't pretend to understand. I sat down, the weight of exhaustion catching up to me. For the first time in my life, someone was calling me Ms. Noor without judgment. Not ungrateful daughter. Not problem child. Just, Ms. Noor. The glass doors to the back office opened, and a man in a charcoal suit stepped out. Mid-40s, calm eyes, confidence without arrogance. He extended a hand. "Isla Noor?" I nodded, standing quickly. "Daniel Shaw," he said. His handshake was firm but careful, as if I might break. "Thank you for coming on short notice." He gestured toward a private conference room. The walls were lined with abstract art and one large window overlooking the gray skyline. On the table sat a folder thick with papers, embossed with a gold seal. "Please, sit," he said. I obeyed, my throat dry. "I know this must be unexpected," he began. "Your relative, the late Mr. Farid Noor, passed 3 weeks ago. You were listed as a named beneficiary in his final will and testament." I blinked. "I don't understand. I barely knew him." He nodded slowly. "That's often the case in estranged families. But Mr. Noor was very specific in his wording. He mentioned a forgotten child of the household. That phrase was underlined. A pulse of heat ran through me. He said that? Yes. He opened the folder and slid a few documents toward me. "We'll go over the details during the official reading. You'll be joined by 2 other parties shortly. I believe you can guess who they are." I could. My stomach turned cold. Daniel noticed. "If it helps," he said gently, "you don't need to speak to them today. You only need to listen. And sign where required." I nodded numbly. "What happens if I don't sign?" "Then you forfeit certain rights. But I don't recommend that." He paused, leaning back slightly. "Ms. Noor. I've read a lot of wills. This one is different. There's intent behind it, almost like Mr. Noor knew something about your situation." My pulse spiked. "My situation?" He smiled faintly. "You'll understand soon enough." Before I could ask what that meant, the door opened behind me. Footsteps. Familiar voices. My mother's perfume hit first, lavender and control. Then my father's low muttering. And finally, Sammy's laugh. Daniel rose to greet them, unbothered, composed. "Mr. and Mrs. Noor, and Mr. Sammy Noor. Thank you for joining us." I didn't turn around. My mother's voice cut through the air, brittle and sharp. "What is this nonsense, Isla? Why are you here?" Daniel raised a hand calmly. "Please, have a seat. We're about to begin." I looked down at the table, at the thick folder with my name on the first page. Beneficiary, Isla F. Noor. My hands trembled, but I didn't move. Not this time. The meeting was about to begin. He adds, "Please don't discuss this with your family until after you arrive." The air in that conference room didn't feel like air, it felt like pressure. It smelled faintly of cologne, money, and tension. My family filled the space like a storm that hadn't yet decided when to break. My mother took the chair closest to Daniel's desk, her chin lifted with offended elegance. My father stood behind her, hands clasped like a politician pretending calm. Sammy sprawled into the seat opposite me, his grin wide, unbothered, almost rehearsed. I kept my hands on my lap, nails digging into my palms to keep myself from shaking. Daniel adjusted his glasses and began, "Before we proceed, I must remind everyone that this is a confidential legal reading of the will of Mr. Farid Noor, deceased on the 1st of December. All attendees present are directly named in the testament. My father interrupted instantly. Yes, but we were told this was a mistake. My daughter has nothing to do with my brother's estate. Daniel looked at him coolly. If there was an error, Mr. Noor, it wasn't ours. The late Mr. Noor personally submitted his testament 6 months before his death, reviewed and signed by witnesses. Your daughter is named explicitly. My mother stiffened. Explicitly? For what? For inheritance distribution. Sammy laughed under his breath. You've got to be kidding. This has to be some joke. I didn't speak. My throat was dry, but my heart beat so hard it made my ears ring. Daniel ignored them and opened the folder. The sound of the paper sliding out was sharper than any accusation. This will was executed under the provisions of the Federal Inheritance Act. Shall I read it in full? My father's voice dropped low. We don't need the theatrics. I'm afraid it's procedure, Daniel replied politely, but with an undertone that warned him not to interrupt again. He began reading. To my brother, Idris Noor, and his wife, Hania Noor, I leave my sincere condolences for the life they have chosen. May wealth never become their only language. My mother's face turned a shade paler. To their son, Sammy Noor, I wish better judgment than his parents ever taught him. Sammy's grin vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Daniel turned the page, voice steady. And to my niece, Isla Noor, I leave the remainder of my estate, liquid assets, property, and business holdings, to be managed under a protected trust until she reaches the age of 25. She alone has full beneficiary rights as outlined in Schedule B. The room went silent. Completely silent. I heard the clock on the wall tick 5 times before anyone moved. Then, chaos. What? My father shot to his feet. This is absurd. My mother's voice followed, sharp enough to break glass. This must be forged. She's a child. She's manipulated someone. Sammy looked between them and me, his face pale with disbelief. You? He left it to you? Daniel remained perfectly still, his hands folded. The original document is notarized, registered, and verified. There is no legal irregularity. My father slammed his hand against the table. My brother despised us. He cut ties years ago. Daniel raised a brow. And yet, he entrusted your daughter with his entire estate. Interesting, isn't it? My mother's voice cracked with fury. He's punishing us. He's using her to humiliate us. Daniel's tone stayed calm. The deceased's motivations are not for us to judge, Mrs. Noor. Our role is to execute his wishes exactly as written. My parents turned toward me then, 2 sets of eyes burning through me like searchlights. You knew about this, my mother accused. I didn't, I whispered. My father scoffed. Of course you did. That's why you ran off last night. You've been scheming with them. I shook my head, words catching in my throat. I didn't even know he was alive. Daniel interjected before they could attack again. Let me be clear. The trust has already been established. Funds are secured under Ms. Noor's name. Access remains pending final verification of her identification documents. My mother clutched her pearls like the floor was collapsing. You mean, she already owns it? In legal terms, Daniel replied, yes. Sammy finally found his voice, bitter and low. How much are we talking about? Daniel didn't flinch. That's confidential until asset transfer proceedings are complete. My father's laughter came out sharp and humorless. Confidential? She's 19. She can't even handle a checking account properly. You expect her to manage an estate? Daniel met his glare evenly. She won't have to. The trust comes with a legal guardian, selected by Mr. Noor himself. My mother leaned forward. And who's that supposed to be? Daniel smiled faintly. Me. For the first time, my father had no comeback. I sat there, frozen, the words entire estate circling in my mind like fireflies. I didn't want the money. I didn't even understand what it meant yet. But for the first time in my life, something enormous existed that wasn't under their control. Daniel slid a document toward me. Please sign this acknowledgement of attendance, Ms. Noor. This confirms you were present for the reading. My fingers trembled as I took the pen. My mother hissed, "Don't you dare sign that." Daniel looked at her, expression calm but cutting. "Mrs. Noor, interfering with a legal beneficiary's rights is a federal offense. I suggest you let your daughter make her own decisions." The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips as I pressed the pen down and signed Isla F. Noor. When I looked up, Daniel was watching me, not pitying, but approving. "Very good." He stood, collecting the papers. "We'll arrange a private session to go over details, Ms. Noor. I advise you not to share this information until the trust is officially transferred." My mother stood as well, trembling with rage. "You think you can take what belongs to this family?" Daniel turned to her. "Legally, Mrs. Noor, it already belongs to her." My father's jaw flexed, his voice low and venomous. "You won't see a cent of that money, Isla. Do you hear me? Not 1 cent." I finally looked up, my voice quiet but steady. "It's not about the money. It's about the truth." Sammy glared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. "You're pathetic." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm done being powerless." Daniel closed his folder, breaking the tension with a calm, final sound. "We're done here." As my parents stormed out, muttering, the air finally thinned. I sat there in silence until he spoke again. "You did well," Daniel said. "Better than most adults in your position." I gave a shaky laugh. "I feel like I'm about to faint." "That's normal." He reached into his briefcase and placed a sealed envelope on the table. The paper was thick, the handwriting neat. "This was left for you personally," he said. "From Mr. Noor. He wanted you to read it alone." My fingers brushed the envelope like it might burn me. "What does it say?" I asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "I don't know. It's addressed to you, and only you." He places a sealed envelope on the table and says, "This letter was left for you only." I held the envelope like it was alive, small, fragile, and trembling between my hands. The seal bore the initials FN in gold. My name was written beneath it in slanted, deliberate strokes, "To Isla, do not let them take what's yours." I looked up at Daniel. His expression was calm, respectful. "Take your time," he said. "I'll step out and give you privacy." He left quietly, the door clicking shut behind him. The room felt heavier without his steady presence. The air hummed faintly, like it was aware something irreversible was about to happen. I slid my finger under the seal and broke it open. Inside was a folded letter, written in blue ink, no legal jargon, no printed text. Just a man's handwriting, looping and uneven in places. "Isla. You don't know me, but I've known you since the day you were born. I watched from a distance as your parents turned your light into shadow. They think silence protects them, but truth doesn't die just because it's buried under money or fear. Your father and I built something together once, a business, a future. But greed has no loyalty. When I refused to falsify numbers for him, he cut me out. Your mother called me the curse of their success. They never forgave me for walking away, and they made sure you never heard my name. I tried to reach you when you were 12. I sent a letter. It came back unopened. So I waited. I watched. And I made sure that when I was gone, the truth would find you, even if they tried to stop it. Everything I have left, the house, the shares, the accounts, is yours. Not because of blood. Because you refused to become like them. Because you were honest in a house that punished honesty. You will be hated for this. Let them. Hate reveals itself faster than love ever does. Don't give it back. Don't explain yourself. Don't let them convince you that peace means surrender. Your courage will be your inheritance long before the money ever reaches your hands. Far ignore. My vision blurred halfway through. I had to blink several times to see the words clearly again. For years, I'd believed I was invisible in my own bloodline. But someone they erased, had seen me the entire time. I sat there in stunned silence, the paper trembling between my fingers. I thought of my father, the man who taught me that obedience was safety. My mother, who said forgiveness was proof of love. Sammy, who smiled every time he won at my expense. And now I knew the truth, they'd spent years building walls around a secret they couldn't afford for me to know. A knock sounded softly at the door. Daniel peeked in. "Are you all right?" I nodded, though my voice was gone. He walked in, closing the door behind him. I assume he said what he needed to say. I swallowed hard. He knew. About all of it. Daniel's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened. That doesn't surprise me. Farid Noor was a meticulous man. He anticipated reactions, planned contingencies, and left instructions for everything, including you. Including me? He opened a drawer and pulled out another folder. There's one more document. It confirms the structure of the trust. I leaned forward, hands still trembling. The assets, he said, are considerable. Several properties, business shares, and liquid funds, collectively worth more than 8 figures. They're held under a trustee system. Until your 25th birthday, you'll receive monthly distributions for education and living expenses. The rest remains protected from interference. I stared at him. Protected, from who? He met my gaze. From anyone who might attempt to contest it. A cold realization spread through me. You mean my parents? He nodded once. Correct. The trust includes an automatic freeze clause. Any attempt by third parties to access or challenge the funds triggers legal investigation. I let out a shaky breath. So they can't touch it? Not without your consent. The words didn't feel real. I'd lived 19 years at their mercy, and now, a single document had rewritten the balance of power. Daniel continued, there's more. You'll receive ownership transfer of the Noor family home once all verifications are finalized. It was purchased under your uncle's holding company. He never told your father. I froze. My house? He nodded. Yes. Technically, it's already yours. I couldn't speak. My thoughts came in fragments, the kitchen where I'd been humiliated, the stairs I wasn't allowed to climb when guests were over, the door my father slammed in my face. And now that same house belonged to me. A hysterical laugh escaped before I could stop it. He's going to lose his mind. Daniel smiled faintly. He already has. That's why you must keep calm. They'll come after you emotionally before they try legally. I looked down at the letter again, tracing the ink where my uncle's signature ended. He said, they'd hate me for this. Daniel's tone was steady. They will. But you'll survive it. He gathered the papers, stacking them neatly. There's one final form to sign before you leave today. It acknowledges receipt of your beneficiary rights and confirms that you understand your legal position. I reached for the pen, my hand still shaking. You're doing the right thing, he said softly. This isn't theft. It's justice, delayed, but deserved. As I signed my name, the air shifted again, something invisible but undeniable. It wasn't peace. It wasn't victory. It was power, quiet and precise. When the pen left the paper, Daniel closed the folder and extended his hand. Congratulations, Ms. Noor. You are now the sole heir to the Noor estate. The words hit harder than any insult my family had ever thrown at me. Sole heir. The door burst open behind us. My mother's voice cracked like a whip. You think you can cut us out of our own blood? Daniel's calm didn't falter. Mrs. Noor, this is a private meeting. My father's face was red with fury. You ungrateful. Mr. Noor, Daniel interrupted sharply, any further outburst will be noted for legal misconduct. I suggest you leave before I call for security. The threat landed. They froze. I stood, clutching the letter to my chest, and looked at them both. My voice came out low but clear. You told me I was nothing without you. My mother's eyes narrowed. You still are. I smiled faintly. Then why are you afraid? Her lips parted, but no words came. Daniel stepped forward, motioning toward the exit. That will be all for today. As they stormed out, Sammy lingered by the door, his expression unreadable. He stared at me for a moment, then smirked, not victory this time, but something darker. This isn't over, he said quietly. I met his eyes. I know. The door closed behind them, and the silence left behind was almost holy. I looked down at the letter one more time, Farid's words etched deep in my mind, don't explain yourself. Don't give it back. For the first time in my life, I had something no one in that house could touch. The office door opens, and my mother's voice cuts through the hall, where is she? The next morning, I woke up in a rented room above a small bakery, its walls smelling faintly of sugar and smoke. The lawyer's folder lay open beside me on the bed, every page stamped with the official seal of something my parents couldn't undo. For the first time in my life, I had proof. Not emotions, not pleas, proof. I sat cross-legged, rereading Farid's letter again and again, tracing the line that changed everything. They think silence protects them, but truth doesn't die just because it's buried under money. It wasn't just inheritance anymore. It was strategy. Daniel's words echoed from yesterday, they'll come after you emotionally before they try legally. He was right. By 9 a.m., the calls started. First from my mother, no greeting, no remorse. You think this is funny? You think this makes you powerful? I didn't answer. Then my father, you better get that man to retract whatever lies he's told the court. We raised you. We can destroy you. Then Sammy, the cherry on top, you really believe this? That old fool's money is cursed. You'll choke on it. I blocked all three numbers. The silence that followed felt cleaner than air. But Daniel had told me one thing before we parted ways yesterday, document everything, Isla. Don't react, record. So I did. I opened a new folder on my phone and titled it, Evidence. Inside it, I created subfolders, voicemails, screenshots, financial, threats. The act of organizing their cruelty felt almost peaceful. Like sweeping shards of glass into neat piles before building again. I went to a nearby electronics store and bought a small voice recorder, cheap, discreet, easy to hide in a coat pocket. When I stepped outside, the December air bit at my skin. But this time, I didn't flinch. The cold made me sharper. By noon, I met Daniel again at his office. He greeted me with his usual quiet professionalism, a contrast to the chaos that lived in my veins. You got my message? He asked. Yes, I said. They've already called. I assumed they would. He opened his briefcase, pulling out several printed sheets. I need to walk you through what happens next. He handed me a page labeled Preventive Legal Safeguards. Your uncle's estate is protected under multiple layers, he explained. However, your parents can still attempt emotional or reputational coercion. They may fabricate claims, psychological instability, manipulation, financial mismanagement. We've seen it all. I swallowed hard. They've already started. He nodded knowingly. They'll escalate. But I want you to stay one step ahead. Keep all communication documented. Every text, every call, every attempt at contact. I've already started, I said, showing him the folder on my phone. He smiled faintly. Good. That's how we win. Win? I repeated, the word strange in my mouth. Winning isn't revenge, he said softly. It's clarity. Once the facts stand on their own, they can't gaslight you anymore. I nodded slowly. And what about the trust? It's secure. But there's a process before full activation, an audit of the assets, signature verifications, and a mandatory waiting period. Until then, your inheritance is legally frozen. That's standard. Frozen, I repeated, my chest tightening. So they can still make moves? He shook his head. Not legally. But intimidation doesn't require legality. When I left the office that afternoon, the city looked different. Not safer, but clearer. Every building, every sound, every person walking by felt like part of a silent audience watching a story unfold. I walked to a nearby cafe, ordered a coffee, and sat in the corner with my notebook. I began to write, not diary entries, but evidence. December 26th, 9:02 a.m., call from mother. Threatened. No remorse. 9:14 a.m., father called. Said he can destroy me. 9:35 a.m., Sammy. Hostile tone. Mentioned curse. I wrote until the pages filled with a new kind of record, truth untwisted. A woman in her 40s sitting nearby gave me a curious glance. Are you studying? She asked kindly. In a way, I said, smiling faintly. Just learning what happens when people lie. She laughed softly, not understanding, and went back to her laptop. But her normalcy grounded me. It reminded me that the world outside my family still existed, and it wasn't all cruelty. By evening, I walked back to my rented room. The bakery downstairs was closing, the smell of pastries fading into warmth and exhaustion. I climbed the narrow stairs, my recorder hidden in my pocket. When I opened the door, my phone buzzed with a notification, unknown number. I pressed play on the voicemail, heart pounding. Isla, this is your father. We're trying to be civil here. You don't want this to get ugly. Return our calls or we'll have to take action. The word action made my skin crawl. I hit record on my device and replayed the voicemail out loud, capturing every syllable. Then I labeled the file, Threat 1. I played it again, slower this time. His voice sounded smaller, weaker, desperate to sound powerful. I saved it, exhaled, and looked at the ceiling. Maybe Farid had been right, silence wasn't weakness. It was the most dangerous sound in a room full of people who only knew how to shout. The next morning, I woke to another call, this time from a new number. I hesitated, then answered. Isla? It was Daniel. There's been a development, he said. I received notice that a motion has been filed under your parents' name. They're contesting the will. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means they've declared your inheritance invalid due to mental manipulation of the deceased. I laughed bitterly. So now they're saying I manipulated a man I never met. That's what they'll claim. It's a standard move, meant to scare you. But we'll counter it. I sat down, heart pounding. How? By showing a pattern, he said calmly. A pattern of coercion, emotional abuse, and financial control from your parents' side. Which means. He paused, letting the silence finish the sentence for him. I whispered it anyway. Evidence. Yes, he said. Everything you've started collecting. Keep going. Don't respond to their messages, let them keep talking. The more they do, the more they expose themselves. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Understood. And Isla? His tone softened. I know it feels like war. But this is what justice looks like before it's polished. The line went quiet after that. I sat there, clutching my phone, my heart steady in the storm. The fear was still there, but it wasn't in control anymore. I looked at the folder of recordings, then at Farid's letter taped to the wall above my bed. Don't explain yourself. Don't give it back. I wouldn't. Not this time. A new message arrives, court notice filed. 2 days later, my parents decided to change tactics. The fury call stopped. The shouting, the threats, the voicemails, all vanished. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was camouflage. Daniel warned me this would happen. When direct intimidation fails, he said, they'll switch to performance. He was right. The morning it began, I received a message from my mother. Short. Polished. Almost loving. Mom, we've been worried sick. Can we meet for lunch? Just family. Let's put this ugliness behind us. Red heart. The emoji made me laugh out loud. I almost admired the audacity. Still, I agreed to meet, on Daniel's advice. Control the setting, he said. Public place, visible exits, recording on. So I chose a cafe near the old city square, bright and open, full of people and sunlight. The kind of place where appearances mattered. They arrived 10 minutes late, dressed for a magazine cover. My mother in pearls, my father in his tailored coat, Sammy trailing behind like a shadow made of arrogance. My mother's face lit up with artificial warmth. Isla, sweetheart. You look pale. Are you eating? I forced a small smile. Trying to. She kissed the air near my cheek, then sat. My father ordered tea without asking what I wanted. Sammy gave me a grin that didn't reach his eyes. We're so glad you agreed to meet, my mother said sweetly. This whole situation has been so painful for the family. For you, maybe, I said quietly. Her smile didn't falter. For all of us. But we can fix this, Isla. We just need to come together again. I turned on my phone's recorder beneath the table, voice steady. You mean after you forged my signature? After you tried to end my education? Her expression hardened for a split second before recovering. You're misunderstanding what we did. We were protecting you from making rash decisions. By erasing my future? My father cleared his throat sharply. Watch your tone. We're trying to talk like adults here. I've been an adult since the day you stopped being parents. He leaned forward, voice low. That attitude will destroy you. The waiter came by, refilling cups, pretending not to hear. I envied him for the freedom to walk away. Sammy broke the tension with a laugh. Let's not dramatize this, Isla. You've always liked making things bigger than they are. Bigger? I repeated. You stole my savings, humiliated me, and told people I was unstable. He shrugged, smirking. You overreacted. You always do. That word, overreacted, had been their favorite knife since childhood. They used it when I cried after being blamed for his messes. They used it when I asked why he got new shoes while mine had holes. They used it when I dared to ask for equality in a house that worshipped imbalance. I didn't flinch this time. I let the silence stretch until my mother filled it, desperate to regain control. This isn't about blame, she said softly. It's about family. You have to understand how this looks to people. A daughter turning on her own parents over money. It's not about money, I interrupted. Then prove it, my father snapped. Give it up. Return the estate, sign over the trust, and we'll handle it responsibly for you. I almost laughed. Handle it like you handled my tuition? My mother's lips tightened. You're too young to understand these things. I'm 19, not blind. She exhaled sharply. Isla, please. This isn't good for anyone. The community is talking. Your aunt called, asking if you've joined a cult. I blinked. A cult? Sammy grinned. You have to admit, it does sound like something out of a soap opera. Estranged uncle, secret will, lost fortune. I leaned closer, voice calm but sharp. You left out the part where my parents forged documents and emotionally blackmailed me. That got him. His grin flickered. My father stood suddenly, his tea untouched. Enough. We're not airing dirty laundry in public. I stayed seated. That's all you ever cared about, isn't it? How things look. His voice lowered to a hiss. You don't know what you're doing, Isla. You think this man, this lawyer, cares about you? He's using you. You'll ruin everything we built. I looked up at him, my calm finally cracking into cold truth. What you built was a lie. He froze, stunned by the sharpness in my tone. For once, I didn't sound like a child. My mother tried to intervene, smiling tightly at the waiter who lingered nearby, pretending nothing was wrong. Let's talk privately, please. There's no need for scenes. I'm not making one, I said, reaching for my bag. You are. I stood up, ready to leave, but my father grabbed my wrist, hard enough that pain shot through my arm. The entire cafe seemed to pause. His grip was iron, his voice barely a whisper. You listen to me. You will not destroy this family for a dead man's grudge. My heart pounded, but I didn't pull away. I pressed the recorder in my pocket, making sure every word burned into memory. I spoke softly, evenly. Let go of me, or I'll make sure a judge hears every threat you've made since Christmas. He froze. My mother's face drained of color. Sammy's smirk vanished completely. Slowly, my father released me. I straightened my sleeve, my voice still calm. Don't worry. I'm not destroying this family. I'm just removing myself from it. And with that, I walked out, past the stairs, past the whispers, past every invisible leash they'd wrapped around me since childhood. Outside, the air felt sharper, brighter. The recorder in my pocket was still blinking red. Every word, every threat, every manipulation, captured. I texted Daniel immediately. I have recordings. Clear ones. Daniel, excellent. Don't delete anything. Bring them to the office tomorrow. I looked back at the cafe through the window. My family sat frozen inside, like actors waiting for a director who'd stopped showing up. The performance was collapsing. Sammy whispers, sign it over, Isla, or I'll make sure you never step on campus again. Daniel was waiting for me when I walked into the office the next morning, his desk already covered with files and neatly stacked case documents. He looked up the moment I entered, his gaze sharp, professional, but protective. You look exhausted, he said. I'm fine, I lied, sliding my phone across the table. Everything's on here. The recordings, the messages, even the cafe incident. He unlocked the phone with my permission and listened to a few seconds of the first clip, my father's hissed threats, the sound of the chair scraping, my voice steady but cold. When it ended, he nodded once. This, he said, tapping the screen, is exactly what we needed. I exhaled slowly. They're not going to stop, are they? No, he said simply. But that's good for us. People who rely on intimidation can't resist exposing themselves. Every word they think is power is actually evidence. He opened a file labeled Strategy, nor Estate Dispute. The inside was filled with bullet points and sections highlighted in red. Here's how we proceed, he said, his tone measured. First, we'll establish a timeline of coercive control, emotional, financial, and academic. You said they suspended your schooling? Yes. They called it a punishment until I apologized. Daniel wrote it down. Perfect. That shows economic manipulation. Next, the forged withdrawal form. You still have a copy? I reached into my folder and handed him the crumpled paper I'd taken from the kitchen that day. His eyes flicked over it, and a small smile ghosted across his face. This, Ms. Noor, is fraud. Do you realize how serious that is? I blinked. Serious how? It's criminal. Especially if they submitted it to your institution pretending it came from you. I hadn't even considered that. My father, a criminal. My mother, complicit. Sammy, an accomplice. It felt like the floor beneath my childhood was dissolving into dust. Daniel leaned back, folding his hands. We're going to respond to their inheritance dispute not just defensively, but offensively. We'll include counterclaims of forgery, coercion, and educational sabotage. They wanted a courtroom? We'll give them one. I stared at him. You think we can win? He smiled faintly. We don't have to win emotionally, Isla. We just have to prove the facts. And you've already done that. I felt something shift inside me, quiet, dangerous confidence. He continued, I'll file a preliminary injunction today to prevent them from accessing any part of your uncle's estate, including secondary assets or business affiliations. Once that's in place, they won't be able to touch anything. Not even the family house. The family house. The place that still haunted my dreams, the kitchen where they humiliated me, the hallway where my mother whispered poison disguised as care. They'll lose their home? I asked softly. Technically, he said, it was never theirs to begin with. I looked down at my hands, tracing the faint lines in my palms. It didn't feel like victory yet. It felt like the aftermath of a storm that hadn't finished breaking. Daniel must have read my thoughts. Justice doesn't always feel good, he said. It just feels clean. He opened another folder, thicker, heavier. The tab read Evidence, Phase 2. Inside were transcriptions of my recordings, printed screenshots of their texts, and a page with the title, Restraining Order, Draft. I stared at it. You're filing that? Yes. For your safety, and to reinforce the pattern of harassment. You won't need to appear in court yet, but the judge will review it privately. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Do people actually get protection from this? Sometimes, he said. But in your case, it's more than protection. It's strategy. Every legal wall we build limits their ability to manipulate. They can't guilt you if they can't reach you. The simplicity of that sentence hit me harder than anything else. They can't guilt you if they can't reach you. I exhaled shakily. What if they come after me anyway? He didn't hesitate. Then they'll walk straight into the evidence. He slid a USB drive across the desk. This has copies of all recordings and signed statements. Keep one version offline. Hide it somewhere they'll never find. I pocketed it, feeling its small weight like armor. As he typed the restraining order draft, I looked out the window at the skyline, gray, cold, uninviting. But for the first time, I realized I wasn't looking for escape. I was watching from higher ground. When he finished, he printed the document and handed it to me for review. Petitioner, Isla F. Noor. Respondents, Idris Noor, Hania Noor, Sami Noor. Grounds, emotional coercion, financial control, forged documentation, threat of retaliation. Seeing their names under the word respondents sent a tremor through my body. My family had turned me into the defendant my entire life. Now, for once, they were the ones answering for something. Daniel slid me a pen. You don't have to sign today. Just know it's ready when you are. I stared at the paper. If I sign this, there's no going back. He nodded. That's the point. I looked down at my name, bold and sharp against the white. It didn't look like weakness anymore. It looked like identity reclaimed. I signed. The sound of the pen on paper was small but final. Daniel exhaled softly, almost relieved. Good, he said. Now the law stands between you and them. I tried to smile. Feels strange, using the same system they always used to threaten me. That's the irony of control, he said. It collapses when someone smarter learns the rules. He gathered the papers into a folder, clipped them neatly, and labeled it Noor vs. Noor, active. The words looked like poetry. Brutal, legal poetry. I stood to leave, but he stopped me with a final note of warning. They'll panic when they realize you're not scared anymore. Don't respond. Don't react. Just record. I know, I said, gripping my bag. Silence isn't weakness. He smiled. No, Isla. In court, silence is strategy. As I left the office, the city wind hit me full in the face, sharp but cleansing. I walked down the street toward the train station, my coat fluttering, my recorder in my pocket still blinking red, always on, always watching. The war my parents had started was about to enter a new battlefield. And this time, I wasn't their daughter. I was their opponent. He slides a folder toward me labeled, Restraining Order, Draft. When the invitations went out, I knew it wasn't coincidence. My mother never hosted without an agenda. She called it a Christmas forgiveness dinner, an evening of healing after the family misunderstanding. The moment Daniel saw the forwarded message, he exhaled sharply. "They're staging a performance," he said. "They'll try to paint you as the aggressor in front of witnesses. Go, but only with preparation." Preparation meant one thing, my recorder. I slipped it into my jacket pocket before leaving. The house was exactly as I remembered it, warm light, perfect decor, and the sickly smell of pretense. My father greeted guests with the charm of a man who'd never yelled, my mother floated in pearls, and Sammy was the picture of smug apology. I lingered near the edge of the crowd, every breath laced with caution. "Isla." My mother's voice rang out across the living room. "Come here, darling. Everyone's been so worried about you." She said it loud enough for every cousin, aunt, and family friend to hear. The room turned, eyes flicking toward me, curiosity, pity, judgment. I smiled tightly. "I'm sure they have." Her laugh was brittle. "Let's not start with attitude, Tonight is about peace." My father joined us, glass in hand. "Your mother's right. Let's be civil." Civil, that word always meant, don't tell the truth here. He raised his voice for effect. "We've all made mistakes, but family forgives. Even when one of us," he glanced at me, "has been misled by outsiders." There it was, the subtle smear. The story they'd been feeding people. I could almost hear the whispers echoing, poor Idris and Hania. Their daughters being manipulated by some lawyer, chasing imaginary money. I let them talk. That was the beauty of silence, it gave them rope. Sammy approached, all crocodile smiles. "Hey, little sis. You look, well. Guess legal money suits you." "I wouldn't know," I said, voice flat. "Haven't touched a penny of it." "Still playing the victim?" he muttered. I didn't reply. The recorder blinked softly from my pocket, capturing every venomous syllable. Then my mother called for attention. "Before we eat," she announced, "I'd like to say something." Every head turned toward her. My stomach tightened. She clasped her hands theatrically. "This year has been difficult. Our family faced misunderstandings. Harsh words. But we're here tonight to restore what was lost, love, respect, and forgiveness." My father stepped forward beside her. "We raised our children with values. We never thought one of them would turn against us publicly. But tonight, we want to mend that. Isla, sweetheart, come here." The crowd's attention shifted to me. My pulse raced. "What do you want?" He smiled, rehearsed and charming. "Just say a few words. Tell everyone this legal drama is behind us. That you love your family." So that was the trap, public confession, forced submission, reputation laundering. My mother's eyes gleamed. "Show them you're still our daughter, Isla. That you're not being manipulated by greed or outsiders." I wanted to laugh at the irony, outsiders. My uncle had been their blood. I was the one they'd exiled. My throat burned, but I stayed composed. I reached into my pocket and pressed record again, this time on my phone. I smiled sweetly. "You want me to tell everyone the truth?" My father nodded, confident. "That's all we've ever wanted." "Okay." I turned toward the guests. "The truth is, my parents suspended my schooling on Christmas Eve and threw me out of the house because I refused to apologize for something I didn't do." The room went still. I continued, steady now. "They forged documents in my name, tried to steal my scholarship, and filed a false legal dispute over an inheritance that doesn't belong to them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother's smile collapsed. "Isla," she hissed, "not here." "Why not?" I said calmly. You wanted me to speak. You wanted witnesses. Sammy stepped forward, face flushing red. Stop lying. I met his glare. You should be careful what you call a lie when people are recording. That made my father snap. You will not humiliate us in our own home. I turned to him, my voice ice. You already did that for years. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. Then, from behind me, came a new voice, measured, deep, cutting through the tension like a blade. Good evening, Daniel said, stepping through the doorway. Every head turned. He was dressed impeccably, calm as ever, holding a briefcase that seemed heavier than law itself. My father's face drained of color. What the hell are you doing here? Daniel gave a polite nod. I was invited. By my client, Ms. Noor. He looked around the room, his gaze sweeping across every shocked face. Since you've all chosen to make this matter public, I suppose it's appropriate that we clarify a few facts. My mother stammered, this is a private. Correction, Daniel interrupted gently. This is a venue filled with witnesses. And as Ms. Noor's legal representative, I'd advise everyone here to listen carefully before making further defamatory statements. You could hear the clinking of glass as someone nervously set down their drink. Daniel opened his briefcase and laid out a neat stack of folders on the coffee table. These are copies of recorded threats, forged forms, and withdrawal documents, all verified. My father's jaw tightened. You can't. Oh, I can, Daniel said, voice steady. Because you involved third parties. You sent those forms to an academic institution. That makes them public fraud, not family business. My mother looked like she was about to faint. The room was silent except for Daniel's calm explanation of timelines, legal terms, and evidence. He spoke like a surgeon, precise, ruthless, leaving no room for denial. Then he turned to me. Ms. Noor, would you like to add anything? I looked at my parents. Their faces, so carefully constructed all my life, were cracking under the weight of exposure. No, I said quietly. The evidence speaks for itself. Daniel nodded. Then we're done here. The tension snapped. Guests began murmuring, gathering their things, eyes wide with disbelief. Some avoided looking at me altogether. Others gave small, pitying smiles, the kind that mean I always wondered. My mother whispered, almost inaudible, how could you do this to us? I looked at her, voice calm, final. You raised me to be silent. You should have taught me to forget. The estate lawyer steps in and says, good evening. I'm here on behalf of Ms. Noor. No one moved. The silence after Daniel's words felt like a courtroom verdict that didn't need a judge. The air in the room had turned cold, heavy, sharp with embarrassment. My father's jaw clenched until a muscle in his cheek twitched. You have no right to parade our family business in front of strangers, he said, his voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. Daniel didn't flinch. Actually, I do. You made it public when you forged institutional documents, and when you filed a fraudulent inheritance dispute. Everything you've done since then is on record, Mr. Noor. He began opening folders with methodical precision. The soft shuffle of paper echoed louder than the chatter of my stunned relatives. He placed 3 documents on the table between us, like a dealer setting down cards that could end a game. This, Daniel said, pointing to the first sheet, is the withdrawal form sent to Isla's University, bearing her forged signature. We have the digital log verifying submission from your home IP address. My father's composure cracked. That's ridiculous. Daniel didn't even look up. Ridiculous would be thinking I wouldn't verify it. He turned to the next document. This one is a transcript of your phone calls to Ms. Noor, threatening her to surrender her inheritance or face consequences. I've transcribed the audio, but the original recordings are secure. My mother made a sound, half gasp, half sob, but Daniel ignored her, laying the third document flat. And finally, he said, a notarized statement confirming the will's authenticity and Mr. Farid Noor's mental soundness during its drafting. That was your main argument in the dispute, wasn't it? That he was manipulated? Sammy stepped forward, face flushed. This is insane. You're twisting everything. Daniel finally raised his eyes. If you'd like to refute any of this under oath, I'd be delighted to schedule a deposition. Sammy went pale. The room remained frozen. My relatives shifted uncomfortably, some pretending to check their phones, others staring at the carpet as though they might fall through it. I sat still, saying nothing. I didn't need to. Every sound of a turning page, every small intake of breath was power. For years, they'd talked over me. Tonight, they could choke on their own words. Daniel continued calmly, as though he were discussing the weather. Now, as for the estate dispute, your petition has been withdrawn. The court dismissed it this morning. What? My father's voice cracked like a whip. Daniel slid another document toward him. You were found to have submitted false statements. The court clerk notified us of the withdrawal's automatic denial. Any future attempt to reopen the case could result in perjury charges. My father stared down at the paper like it was written in a language he'd never learned. My mother finally found her voice. This is humiliation. You came into our home, in front of family. Correction, Daniel interrupted, his tone cool. You invited me by staging a public ambush for your daughter. You wanted witnesses? You have them. The precision of his words cut deeper than shouting ever could. He turned toward the gathered guests, his tone polite but firm. For those of you present, please understand, this matter is now legally documented. Further commentary or gossip could be considered defamation. My aunt, who'd always adored my mother's melodramas, visibly shrank into her seat. My cousin fidgeted with her phone, eyes darting between us like she'd stumbled into a film too raw for comfort. My father opened his mouth to protest, but Daniel raised one final paper. There's one more matter. The property known as Noor Estate, currently under your occupancy, is in fact titled under Mr. Farag Noor's holding company, now under Isla's trust. Effective immediately, you no longer have legal claim to the residence. The color drained from my father's face. You're throwing us out of our own home? Daniel's reply was calm, almost gentle. No. You did that yourselves when you threw her out. Gasps scattered through the room. My mother sank back into her chair, whispering, this can't be happening. But it was. Every moment they'd orchestrated, every manipulation, every lie, they were watching it implode in real time. Daniel gathered his papers, stacking them with deliberate neatness. This concludes our presence here. Ms. Noor and I will be leaving. He turned to me. Are you ready? I nodded. My legs felt steady even as my heart thundered. As we walked toward the door, my father's voice broke through the silence. Isla. I turned. He looked at me, red-faced, shaking, eyes full of something that wasn't regret but disbelief. You'd do this to your own parents? Over money? I took a slow breath. You did this when you made me beg for basic respect. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Then my mother spoke, her voice trembling with rage. We gave you everything. I met her gaze. And you demanded everything back, with interest. Daniel opened the door for me. Before stepping out, he turned one last time. Mr. and Mrs. Noor, he said evenly, if you attempt further contact outside legal counsel, we'll proceed with enforcement of the restraining order now pending review. My mother clutched her pearls, her face tightening with disbelief. Restraining order? Daniel's faint smile didn't reach his eyes. Just a precaution. He guided me through the doorway. Behind us, the murmur swelled, the family murmuring like insects in the dark, voices overlapping in whispers that sounded like guilt disguised as shock. When the door shut, the cold night air hit my face. I breathed it in deeply, the crispness filling my lungs like oxygen for the first time. Daniel turned to me. You handled that perfectly. I shook my head. I didn't even speak. That's what made it perfect, he said. They exposed themselves. Every word I needed from them is now recorded. I looked back at the glowing windows of the house. Inside, my family's empire of lies was cracking. "They'll retaliate," I said quietly. "Yes," Daniel replied, "but not for long. People like them can't survive without control, and we just took that away." We walked to his car, the sound of gravel crunching underfoot. As I reached for the door handle, I saw my reflection in the window. My face looked older, not aged, but defined. "Isla," Daniel said, opening his own door. "You understand what happens next, don't you?" I nodded slowly. "The collapse." He smiled slightly. "Exactly." And as the car pulled away from the house that had raised and buried me, I didn't look back. "The lawyer says, we'll now address the school withdrawal request and who drafted it." The following morning, Daniel called me into the firm. His tone over the phone was clipped, focused, the kind of calm that hides preparation. When I arrived, his assistant led me to a smaller conference room. On the table were 2 laptops, a speaker, and a thick folder marked Evidence, Audio Verification. Daniel looked up, his expression unreadable. "They're trying again," he said. "Another dispute?" He nodded. "They're now alleging emotional manipulation and claiming you're mentally unstable." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "So that's the new angle." He opened the folder and tapped a document. "But today, we end this." I sat down, hands clasped in my lap. Daniel pressed a button on the laptop, and my father's voice filled the room, clear, cold, unmistakable. "You listen to me. You will not destroy this family for a dead man's grudge." Then my mother's voice. "You think anyone will believe you over us? You're an ungrateful child. You should be thanking us we even raised you." And finally, Sammy's, low and venomous. "Sign it over, Isla, or I'll make sure you never step on campus again." I felt my chest tighten, but I didn't look away. Hearing it all played back, stripped of tone and setting, it sounded worse than I remembered. Cruelty recorded is colder than cruelty lived. Daniel watched me for a moment before speaking. "These are gold. The timestamps match your meeting with them at the cafe, and the metadata verifies the recording wasn't tampered with. The opposing counsel can't dispute authenticity." "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "We use it," he said simply. "In court. Publicly." The word publicly landed like thunder. For years, they'd hidden behind family privacy, behind closed doors and whispered shame. Now, those doors were about to open. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Are you ready for that?" I thought about my mother's face the night before, the mask cracking as the truth crawled out. I thought about my father's trembling voice when he realized he'd lost control. About Sammy's smirk fading into silence. "Yes," I said. "I've been ready since the day they threw me out." He nodded once. "Good. The hearing is scheduled for next week. This recording will be played before the magistrate as evidence of coercion and character misconduct. Once that's done, their dispute will collapse." I swallowed, feeling both weightless and heavy. "And after that?" Daniel's eyes softened. "After that, you'll get your life back." That evening, I sat in my small rented room with the lights off, headphones on, listening again. Not to punish myself, just to remember. My father's tone of command. My mother's weaponized calm. Sammy's casual cruelty. Every word proof that I wasn't crazy. That the gaslighting, the isolation, the years of being told I was dramatic or ungrateful, all of it had been real. Tangible. Recordable. Halfway through, I paused the audio. The silence that followed was strange, liberating. The kind of silence that doesn't suffocate, it breathes with you. I whispered to the empty room, "They can't rewrite it anymore." The day of the hearing came faster than I expected. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined, pale walls, polished floors, and the faint scent of paper and nerves. Daniel sat beside me, calm as ever, while across the aisle, my parents and Sammy huddled with their lawyer, a thin, nervous man who already looked defeated. The judge entered, stern but not unkind. "We're here regarding the Noor estate dispute. Counsel for the respondent, proceed." Daniel stood. His voice carried effortlessly, steady and sharp. "Your Honor, before we begin, we'd like to submit supplementary evidence, audio recordings that demonstrate coercion and fraud from the disputing parties." The opposing lawyer objected weakly, claiming privacy invasion. The judge raised an eyebrow. "If these recordings were made during direct contact with the petitioner, they are admissible." Objection denied. Daniel pressed play. My father's voice filled the courtroom, amplified and undeniable. "You will not destroy this family." Then my mother's voice, shaking with fury. "You should be grateful we raised you." Then Sammy's threat. "Sign it over, Isla." The sound bounced off the walls like ghosts testifying on my behalf. When it ended, the silence was thick enough to drown in. Even the court reporter looked shaken. Daniel spoke again, calm as a surgeon. "This is not a story of misunderstanding, Your Honor. It's a documented pattern of coercion, financial, emotional, and academic, used to control a young woman's independence and inheritance. We are not here to argue emotion. We are here to show proof." My mother's lawyer muttered something about editing. Daniel slid the metadata certificate forward like a blade. "Verified by an independent lab yesterday." The judge nodded, reviewing the documents. "Noted. Proceed." He gestured toward the other side. "Mr. Noor, would you like to respond to these recordings?" My father stood, hands trembling. "She provoked us." "You can't understand the—" The judge interrupted him sharply. "Sir, what I understand is that threats are not provocation." He sank back into his chair. My mother's face was pale, her hands trembling against her lap. Sammy avoided my eyes entirely. Daniel spoke again. "Your Honor, the petitioner has endured documented harassment since the reading of the will. We request an immediate dismissal of the dispute and legal reinforcement of Ms. Noor's sole inheritance rights." The judge folded his hands, silent for several moments. Then he said quietly, "I've heard enough." Those 3 words felt like gravity lifting. He looked directly at my parents. "Your actions demonstrate clear coercion and interference in legal proceedings. The dispute is dismissed with prejudice. Any further attempts to contact or manipulate the beneficiary will result in restraining measures." I barely heard the rest. The sound of that single sentence, "dismissed with prejudice," rang louder than any argument I'd ever lost. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over." But as we gathered our papers, I caught my mother stare across the aisle, icy, hollow, broken. She mouthed something silently. "This isn't over." I almost smiled. "It already is." Outside the courthouse, Daniel handed me a certified copy of the judgment. "Keep it safe. This is your freedom in paper form." The sky was overcast, the air crisp. For the first time, I didn't feel small beneath it. I unfolded the judgment and read the words again, my name, standing alone, free of theirs. Isla Noor, beneficiary confirmed. Dispute dismissed. I looked at Daniel. "So what happens now?" He smiled faintly. "Now? You live." And they faced the collapse. Behind us, the courthouse doors swung open, and a familiar voice shouted my name. It was Sammy. I turned slowly, the wind catching my hair as his expression twisted between fury and fear. "You think this is over?" he shouted, stepping closer. "You ruined us." I met his eyes without blinking. "No," I said quietly. "You did." A knock comes at the door, someone announces, "Delivery for Mr. Noor, court documents." By the end of that week, my family's empire began to unravel, quietly, methodically, without the dramatic explosions they were used to. It started with the banks. Daniel called early in the morning. His voice was calm, but I could hear restrained satisfaction beneath it. The injunction was approved, he said. All major accounts associated with the Nor Holdings subsidiary are frozen pending investigation. That includes shared assets, property funds, and trust-linked transfers. I sat up in bed, staring at the sunlight spilling across the wall. So, they can't touch anything? They can't even move a dollar without legal clearance. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't joy exactly, it was disbelief, mixed with a trembling sense of justice catching up after years of running behind. Daniel continued, "You'll likely hear from them soon. They'll panic. They'll beg, rage, threaten. Don't engage. Just forward everything to me." He hung up before I could thank him. The messages began less than an hour later. "Mom, your lawyer is destroying this family. Call me now. Dad, this is ridiculous. The house is ours. You've gone too far. Mom, we just want to talk. Please, Isla. Family doesn't do this to each other." And then, predictably, Sammy. "Sammy, enjoy your victory. The money won't save you." I didn't reply. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the world move on as if mine wasn't collapsing and rebuilding at the same time. Outside, a couple laughed as they crossed the street, carrying a small tree between them. I wondered what it would feel like to have love without control, to be wanted, not owned. The bakery downstairs started its morning routine. The smell of bread filled the air, soft and grounding. For once, the world felt survivable. Then my phone rang again, this time, Daniel. "They filed an appeal this morning," he said. "Claiming financial hardship and emotional distress." "Of course they did," I muttered. "The court will reject it once they review the records. They're desperate. Expect escalation." He wasn't wrong. By evening, my parents were outside my rented building. I saw them through the window first, my mother's cream coat, my father's rigid posture, Sammy lingering a few steps behind, phone in hand like he was documenting the scene. The knock on my door came seconds later. I didn't open it. My mother's voice filtered through, honeyed but tight. "Isla, sweetheart, please. We need to talk. Just 5 minutes." I stood on the other side, frozen. Her tone reminded me of childhood moments when kindness came only after punishment, soft words on the surface, hooks underneath. I didn't move. She knocked again, louder. "We can't lose everything because of a mistake. Your father's blood pressure is spiking. Sammy hasn't slept." I almost laughed. They were worried now, about consequences, not conscience. When I didn't respond, her voice shifted from pleading to sharp. "Do you have any idea what you've done? People are calling. Our accounts are frozen. Your father's reputation." "That's not my problem," I said finally, loud enough to cut through the door. There was silence. Then my father's voice, low and dangerous. "You ungrateful." A thud interrupted him, my mother's hand, pressing against his chest. "Stop," she hissed. I imagined them standing there, a perfect portrait of collapse, pride cracked, control slipping through their fingers. When I finally dared to peek through the peephole, they were gone. Only Sammy lingered at the bottom of the stairwell, staring up at my door. His expression wasn't anger anymore. It was calculation. I pulled the curtain closed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the old building felt like footsteps. I replayed Daniel's words in my head, "Don't engage. Just record." So I did. I kept my phone camera trained on the door, time-stamped. Around midnight, a new sound cut through the quiet, the faint hum of an engine outside, then tires on gravel, then silence again. My chest tightened. When I looked outside, Sammy's car was parked beneath the streetlight. He was inside, face lit by the glow of his phone. Waiting. For what, I didn't know. Maybe to see if I'd crack. Maybe just to remind me that I was being watched. I turned on the light deliberately, letting him see my silhouette by the window. His head snapped up. I raised my phone, pointed it toward him, and hit record. A moment later, the engine roared to life, and the car sped off. I saved the video, labeled it harassment, 12:14 a.m. When I finally fell asleep, it was with Farad's letter under my pillow and Daniel's warning echoing through my mind, people like them can't survive without control. The next morning proved him right. I woke to 20 missed calls and a flurry of messages, all variations of apology and blame. Mom, please. We're sorry. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Dad, you can stop this. Withdraw the lawyer. We'll handle it privately. Sammy, you win. Are you happy now? But the one that hit hardest was short, raw, and revealing. Mom, please don't take the house. It's all we have left. The irony was almost poetic. For years, that house had been my prison, every wall lined with judgment, every room echoing with silence that wasn't peace. And now, it was theirs to lose. I sent the messages to Daniel, who replied within minutes. Daniel, forwarded to court. Their panic is the best evidence we could ask for. I stared at the screen for a long time. My heart should have been light. It wasn't. Victory wasn't sweet, it was sterile. But it was justice. And justice didn't need to taste good. The lawyer receives a call, listens, then says, they filed an inheritance dispute this morning. The next week became a chess match between desperation and silence. They moved in whispers, I moved in evidence. Daniel's updates came daily, each message tightening the web around them. They've hired a new attorney, he said one morning, voice clipped. They're claiming emotional trauma, that you manipulated your uncle before his death. I stared at the phone. I didn't even meet him. Exactly, Daniel said. And the documents prove that. But they're not arguing reality anymore, Isla, they're arguing for sympathy. That's what people do when they've run out of facts. By now, my parents had shifted from fury to strategy. They didn't scream anymore. They performed remorse. That afternoon, a flower delivery arrived at the bakery downstairs. The note attached was written in my mother's neat cursive. We made mistakes. Let's talk privately. We can fix this before the lawyers ruin everything. I didn't respond. I took a photo of the card and sent it to Daniel. He replied. Keep it. It's proof of coercive contact. That evening, the phone calls resumed, this time, softly disguised as care. Sweetheart, my mother said, her tone low and trembling, we're all suffering. Can't you see what this is doing to us? Do you mean what you did to yourselves? I asked. Her breath caught. You sound so cold. This isn't who you are. I almost laughed. You mean it's not who you trained me to be? Silence stretched between us. I could almost hear her swallow her anger. Come home for one night. Please. We'll talk like adults. No lawyers, no threats. Like adults? I repeated. You mean without witnesses? Click. She hung up. A few hours later, the knock came. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there, no makeup, no pearls, just exhaustion wearing a face I barely recognized. Can I come in? She asked quietly. Every instinct screamed no. But I let her in, not out of mercy, but curiosity. She sat on the edge of the chair, wringing her hands. Your father doesn't know I came. He's angry. I'm scared of what's happening. Scared of losing money? I asked. Her eyes snapped up, sharp. Don't do that. You think this is about greed, but you're wrong. This family's falling apart because of your pride. My pride? I repeated softly. You forged my name. You called my school. You told people I was unstable. And now I'm proud? She flinched. We were desperate. We thought you'd been influenced. That lawyer. Daniel saved me, I cut in. You nearly destroyed me. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't believe them. They were the same tears she used when she wanted control wrapped in pity. "I just want peace," she whispered. "Peace or silence?" She looked away. That was my answer. After a long pause, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "Your father doesn't know about this either. I talked to Sammy. We can give you something, money, enough to make this go away. You don't need all of it. Just sign over the trust. Take the cash. Start over." I stared at her, the weight of her words pressing against the walls. It wasn't an apology. It was a bribe dressed as love. She pushed the envelope toward me. I didn't touch it. "Say something," she demanded, voice cracking. "Please, Isla. You can't hate us forever." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "I don't hate you. I just finally see you." Her face hardened. "You'll regret this. You'll be alone." I smiled faintly. "I've been alone since before you noticed." She stood abruptly, fury flashing through the tears. "Your uncle poisoned you against us. You were fine until he died." That sentence was her mistake. I hit record on my phone. "What did you say?" I asked evenly. She froze. "Nothing." "Repeat it." I said. She stopped herself, realizing. Her expression shifted from anger to horror. I tilted my head. "You know what's funny? You never visited him. You pretended he didn't exist. But somehow, you knew enough to accuse him." Her voice broke. "You're twisting my words." "No," I said softly. "I'm just not forgetting them this time." For a long moment, we stared at each other, the kind of silence that ends something permanent. Then she whispered the truest thing she'd ever said. "You're not the same girl." "No," I said. "You made sure of that." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned back, her voice stripped of sweetness. "If you don't agree, we'll destroy you in court." I almost pitied her for saying it while my phone still recorded. When the door clicked shut, I sat down, shaking, not from fear, but adrenaline. The weight of her words lingered in the air. I saved the recording and sent it to Daniel with a single message. They offered a bribe. I recorded everything. He replied immediately. "Good. That's coercion and evidence of intent to tamper. We'll use it." I exhaled slowly, staring at the empty chair where she'd sat. That was the thing about my mother, she'd always believed her love could control outcomes. But love with conditions isn't love. It's currency. And she'd just spent the last of hers. She leans close and says, "If you don't agree, we'll destroy you in court." The following days felt like standing in the quiet before an earthquake, everything still, but trembling underneath. News of the recording spread fast. Not to the public, not yet, but within the extended family. My mother's forgiveness dinners had once kept them loyal. Now, her calls went unanswered. Guilt had its own gravity, and it was dragging them down. The first message came from my aunt, the one who'd ignored my calls on Christmas Eve. "Isla, I didn't know. Your mother told us you were unstable." "I'm so sorry." I didn't reply. Then came another. "Your father's furious. The neighbors know about the court order. He's blaming everyone but himself." And finally, from a cousin I'd grown up with. "You're brave. I wish I had your strength when they turned on me years ago." It stunned me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was exposing a pattern, the generational cruelty no one wanted to name. But my parents weren't done pretending. They released a statement through their new lawyer, cold, polished, full of passive blame. "We are heartbroken by the public betrayal of our daughter, whose misguided advisors have created division in our family." It was theatrical. It was expected. And it only made them look worse. Daniel called that evening, voice laced with quiet triumph. Their appeal was rejected. The restraining order is now in effect. I exhaled, staring at the dim sky outside my window. So it's over? Legally, yes. But emotionally? He paused. You've just started rebuilding. That part takes longer. 2 days later, the hearing about my university enrollment took place. Daniel insisted on attending with me. The boardroom was sterile and quiet, full of administrators pretending not to stare. My father was there too, flanked by his lawyer, face flushed with righteous indignation. The chairwoman spoke first. We've reviewed both claims. Mr. Noor, you asserted your daughter voluntarily withdrew from the university? My father nodded stiffly. That's correct. Daniel leaned forward, voice like silk over steel. May I present Exhibit A? The withdrawal form, filed electronically, signed under Isla's name but submitted from Mr. Noor's home network. Metadata confirms falsification. The document appeared on the projection screen. The room fell silent. The chairwoman looked up sharply. Mr. Noor, did you submit this? My father's mouth opened, then closed. It was a misunderstanding. Daniel's tone remained calm. A misunderstanding involving forgery, coercion, and educational sabotage? My mother's lawyer tried to intervene. Objection, this isn't a courtroom. Daniel turned toward him, perfectly polite. No, but the truth doesn't need a venue. The room buzzed with low whispers. When my turn came, I stood and spoke quietly, hands steady even as my heart raced. All I wanted was to finish my education. They used it as leverage to control me. I'm not asking for pity. I just want to continue without interference. The chairwoman nodded. You will. Effective immediately, your enrollment is reinstated. Your tuition and fees have been secured under your independent trust. I sat back down, breath trembling but steady. My father refused to meet my eyes. Outside the boardroom, Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. That, he said, was dignity. I smiled faintly. It felt like revenge. He chuckled. Revenge is just truth with patience. By the weekend, the mask was gone. My parents' charm, once their greatest weapon, had turned against them. Their friends avoided them, their church board asked for their resignation, and Sammy's job at the family firm was suspended pending investigation. For people who had built their lives on appearances, silence became their punishment. But Sammy couldn't stand silence. He cornered me outside the courthouse after one of the administrative reviews, his voice low and desperate. You're destroying everything. Are you happy now? I turned slowly. He looked thinner, paler, his arrogance eroding under panic. You destroyed it yourself, I said. I just stopped cleaning up after you. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think people will respect you now? You're a scandal. Everyone's whispering. Good, I said softly. Let them whisper about the truth for once. He flinched like I'd slapped him. You're just like him. Who? Our uncle. I smiled faintly. That's the best thing you've ever said to me. He laughed bitterly. You think you've won? You'll end up alone. Maybe, I said. But I won't end up like you. He didn't have a reply. For once, silence won. Later that night, I walked along the river, the city lights shimmering across the water like reflections of lives that weren't mine. The phone buzzed again, another message from Daniel. Final hearing confirmed for Monday. Judge will deliver full verdict. We're almost done. Almost done. The phrase didn't sound like relief, it sounded like release. I stopped at the railing and closed my eyes, letting the wind wash through my hair. Somewhere behind me, I could almost hear the echoes of that old house, the laughter, the manipulation, the quiet cruelty disguised as love. They'd always taught me that family was forever. But forever isn't love when it feels like a sentence. I opened my eyes and whispered, it's not forever anymore. Behind me, the city kept moving, cars, lights, strangers, none of them knowing that a 19-year-old girl had just rewritten her own bloodline. My lawyer whispers, next hearing decides everything, final verdict level. The morning of the verdict arrived gray and unwelcoming. The courthouse stood like a monument to everything I had survived, tall, cold, and indifferent. Yet as I walked through the heavy doors, I realized indifference was a relief. It meant no one here loved me enough to lie. Daniel walked beside me, his calm presence the only anchor in a sea of flashing cameras and murmuring journalists. "Ignore them," he said under his breath. "Today isn't about the noise. It's about the record." Inside, the courtroom was packed, family, reporters, silent observers. My parents sat across the aisle, their expressions carved from the same fragile stone. My mother wore grief like perfume, my father, pride disguised as righteousness. And Sammy, he looked broken in a way that didn't invite sympathy. The judge entered, commanding the room with a quiet authority that silenced everything. "This court will now resume the matter of Noor versus Noor, concerning estate distribution, fraudulent documentation, and claims of coercion." Hearing Noor versus Noor spoken aloud felt surreal. For years, my name had been something my family used as a leash. Now it was a shield, a declaration, a legal wall between us. Daniel rose. "Your Honor, we are here to close the final matter, confirmation of Ms. Isla Noor as the sole heir and the dismissal of the opposing party's claims. We have submitted all evidence, audio recordings, forged documents, digital metadata, and sworn statements. Everything before this court points to a consistent pattern of coercion and falsification." He paused, letting his words breathe. "This is not a story of rebellion. It is one of survival." The opposing lawyer stood, his voice thin and desperate. "Your Honor, my clients were acting out of concern. They feared for their daughter's well-being. Emotional distress." The judge raised a hand. "I've reviewed the evidence. Let's address the facts, not the feelings." He gestured toward Daniel. "Proceed." Daniel clicked play on the court's audio system. My father's voice filled the room again, cold, sharp, unguarded. "You think this money makes you powerful? You're nothing without this family. Then my mother's. If you walk out that door, don't come back. You'll regret this. And Sammy's. Sign it, or I'll make sure you never step on campus again." Each word echoed against the walls, louder than it had sounded in the cafe, louder than it had ever been in my nightmares. My mother covered her mouth. My father stared straight ahead, his jaw trembling. Sammy looked away, face pale, lips pressed tight. When the audio stopped, the silence that followed was heavy with finality. Daniel spoke again. "Your Honor, my client was not just denied her inheritance, she was denied autonomy. What we've witnessed here is not family discipline. It is sustained psychological abuse disguised as parental concern." The judge folded his hands. "And your conclusion?" "That the law is her only surviving relative," Daniel said simply. The room stirred with quiet murmurs. Even the court stenographer hesitated before resuming. The judge turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Noor, do you have anything to say before I issue my decision?" My father stood, shoulders trembling. "We did what we thought was right. She was out of control, disrespectful." The judge's voice cut through his defense. "Forging documents and threatening education is not parenting. It's control." My father sat down slowly, eyes wide, the authority he'd lived by crumbling before the weight of the law. Then the judge looked at me. "Ms. Noor, is there anything you'd like to add?" I stood, my knees steady, my voice even. "Just this, Your Honor, people tell you blood is everything, but sometimes, blood is the first thing that poisons you. I'm not asking for vengeance. I'm asking for distance." A faint, almost invisible smile crossed the judge's face. "Duly noted." He picked up the gavel. "I'm ready to rule." The sound of the wood striking echoed like the ending of a war. He read aloud, "This court finds in favor of the respondent, Ms. Isla F. Noor. All claims filed by the plaintiffs are dismissed with prejudice. The Noor estate, trust, and all related properties are confirmed under her legal control. Furthermore, the restraining order against the plaintiffs will remain in effect until further review. Each word felt like a door unlocking. I exhaled, a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. My body trembled, but not from fear, this time it was release. Across the aisle, my mother's composure shattered. She began to cry, not the quiet tears of guilt, but the loud sobs of someone who can't believe their performance has finally failed. My father stared down at the floor, hollow, still pretending he was dignified. Sammy rubbed his face, muttering something under his breath that even the microphone didn't catch. Daniel leaned toward me. "It's over." I nodded, eyes stinging. "Not yet," I whispered. "They still think they can talk their way out of it." He smiled faintly. "Then let them try." The judge rose, the courtroom following in unison. "This session is adjourned." As he left, my mother reached for me across the aisle, her voice cracking. "Isla, please, tell them you forgive us, please." I turned toward her, the distance between us wider than the room itself. "Forgiveness doesn't erase what you did," I said softly. "It just stops me from becoming you." Her sob broke into a whisper. "We're still your family." "No," I said, voice steady as steel. "You were my lesson." I walked out of the courtroom before she could answer. The air outside hit my face like a baptism. I was free, legally, emotionally, finally. The judge takes a pause, looks down at the file, and says, "I'm ready to rule." The words of the verdict echoed in my skull long after the gavel struck wood. All claims dismissed. Beneficiary confirmed. It sounded sterile, bureaucratic, yet it carried the weight of something sacred. For 19 years, I had lived beneath my parents' law. Now, for the first time, I was under my own. Daniel gathered the papers quietly, every motion deliberate. "You did it," he said, voice even. "You stood your ground all the way to the end." I shook my head slowly. "No. I just stopped letting them speak for me." Outside the courtroom, the air smelled like rain and freedom. The reporters waited with microphones, eager for scandal, but Daniel blocked them with one simple gesture. "No comment," he said. This was never about money. And he was right. It never had been. We walked through the crowd in silence. Somewhere behind us, my mother's voice called my name, faint, desperate. I didn't turn. Her words no longer carried weight, they were echoes bouncing off a door I'd finally closed. When we reached the courthouse steps, Daniel stopped. "What will you do now?" I looked at the gray sky. "Life's small for a while. Breathe. Go back to school. Earn what I keep." He smiled. "That's the best revenge there is." Then he handed me a folder, one last document. "This is the final transfer order. You'll need to sign it to access the estate. But remember, the money's a tool, not a cure." "I know," I said softly. "I just want the noise to stop." The noise didn't stop right away. The moment we left, my phone began buzzing again, news alerts, social media posts, gossip. Screenshots of courtroom sketches. Headlines like "Estranged Daughter Wins Legal Battle Over Family Fortune." They wrote it like fiction. As if my pain had been a plot twist. I turned my phone off and went home. Home, what a strange word. The small rented room above the bakery didn't have much, but it had peace. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the letter that had started it all, its handwriting still bold and deliberate. "Your courage will be your inheritance long before the money ever reaches your hands." He'd been right. The power wasn't in the trust account or the property deeds. It was in surviving without apology. Days passed. The city kept moving. The bakery below me played music again, the kind that hummed through the floor like heartbeat rhythm. I went back to my classes. I walked into the university's hallway and reclaimed my ID card from the registrar. The same woman who'd looked at me with pity months ago now smiled with quiet respect. "Welcome back, Ms. Noor," she said. Hearing my name without venom almost made me cry. In lectures, I sat near the window, taking notes, pretending to be ordinary. But every now and then, my phone would buzz with another legal update, another formal line ending with plaintiffs ordered to vacate. My parents' eviction notice arrived 3 weeks later. Daniel forwarded it with a single sentence. "It's official. The house is yours." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Then let it stay empty. Some ghosts deserve silence, not tenants. He didn't argue. Sammy broke the silence first. He found my email, how, I'll never know, and sent one final message. "You think you've won? Enjoy the house. The money. The name. You'll still die alone." I didn't reply. Some words don't deserve company. I simply archived the email, closed my laptop, and watched the evening light stretch across the floor. The city outside buzzed with normal life, buses, laughter, arguments, routine. And for the first time I was part of it, not hiding from it. I walked to the window and looked out at the skyline. I realized I didn't hate my family anymore, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because hate kept me tied to them. And I was done being their reflection. A week later, I met Daniel for coffee. He handed me a check, the first legal disbursement from the estate. I didn't even look at the amount. "Feels different when it's not stolen from you," he said. I nodded. "I'm not using it yet. I'll finish school first." "That's wise." He leaned back, watching me for a moment. "You know, most people crumble when their family turns on them. You turned that collapse into a case study in strength." I smiled faintly. "Maybe survival's just stubbornness in disguise." He raised his cup. "Then stay stubborn." We sat there a while longer, two quiet survivors of different wars. When I left, the world felt strangely open, like a blank page instead of a cage. That night, as I packed for my move into student housing, I found a small velvet pouch tucked inside Farid's letter envelope. I hadn't noticed it before. Inside was a gold ring, old but polished, engraved with a single word, truth. I slipped it onto my finger and whispered, "Thank you." Then I opened my laptop and wrote my name at the top of a blank document, I Lenore. No parents attached. No explanations needed. And for the first time, it didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. My mother reaches for my hand and says, "Tell them you forgive us, please." I didn't go back to the old house right away. Daniel offered to drive me there after the final paperwork was processed, but I declined. Some places require distance before you can walk through them as yourself again. Weeks passed. Winter thawed slowly, the city shifting from gray to gold. My new life unfolded in quiet, steady pieces, lectures, late nights of study, the bakery owner downstairs slipping me free coffee for the girl who fought the law and won. Peace didn't arrive like a storm, it arrived like a steady breath. When the time finally felt right, I took the train out to my old neighborhood. The air smelled the same, cold and faintly metallic, but the world looked different. Smaller. Honest. The house stood at the end of the street, its perfect paint and trimmed hedges mocking the chaos it once hid. A for sale sign leaned crookedly in the yard. Through the windows, I could see dust gathering where portraits used to hang. The silence around it wasn't sad, it was deserved. I didn't go inside. I just stood at the gate, fingers brushing the iron bars that had once made me feel trapped. "You don't own me anymore," I whispered. And for the first time, I believed it. Back in the city, my routine became a kind of quiet freedom. I spent mornings in class, afternoons in the library, and evenings writing. Not essays, stories. Real ones. About families that pretended to love you while starving you of oxygen. About girls who learned to survive in rooms that hated their voice. Each page felt like unlearning. Each paragraph, a reclamation. The trust disbursements from the estate came through monthly, but I didn't touch them beyond tuition. I lived small, deliberately, because wealth without peace was just another version of the cage they built. Sometimes Daniel called to check in. "They've stayed quiet," he'd say. "Good," I'd reply. "You're doing better than most people I've represented," he said once. "You didn't just win, you healed." "Not healed," I corrected softly. "Just honest." Spring came. One morning, I opened my email to find a message with no subject line, no signature, just a single sentence. "You think you won?" Wait. The sender was anonymous, but I knew the tone. "Sammy." I stared at the message for a long time. The words didn't sting like they used to. They didn't pull me back into fear, they just confirmed what Daniel had warned me: control never dies quietly. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Daniel, deleted it, and went for a walk. Outside, cherry blossoms were blooming across the park, their petals falling like soft confetti. I sat on a bench and watched a child chase them, her laughter carrying through the air. That's when I realized something that made my throat tighten. I was no longer angry. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need them to hurt the way I did. I just needed them to see that I was still here, whole, alive, untamed by their cruelty. My silence had once been survival. Now, it was ownership. A few weeks later, Daniel and I met one last time. He handed me a final envelope. "Everything's concluded," he said. "The trust is fully active. You can access it freely." I nodded, though the money meant less to me than the document itself, proof that my name now stood alone, unshaken. Before leaving, I asked him, "Do you ever get used to watching families destroy each other in court?" He sighed. "No. But sometimes, I get to see one person rebuild themselves after it. That's enough." We shook hands, and when he left, I didn't feel small anymore. That night, I sat by my window, the city lights flickering like pulse lines across the skyline. I opened my journal, the same one I'd started on the night they threw me out, and wrote the final entry. They told me silence was weakness. But silence is how truth survives the noise. They told me family means forgiveness. But sometimes, forgiveness means leaving the door closed. I closed the book gently. My life was no longer a story they authored. The wind rattled the glass softly, carrying faint sounds of laughter from the street below. Somewhere, a song played from a passing car, a melody I didn't recognize, but somehow knew was for me. I turned off the lamp, letting the night settle. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the unwanted daughter or the disobedient child. I wasn't the scandal or the cautionary tale. I was simply Eleanor. And that was enough. I whispered into the quiet, the words tasting new and certain. "I forgive you. But I don't return." Then I smiled, not for them, not for anyone watching, but for the girl who had once begged for a place at her own family's table and instead built her own. Outside, the first drops of summer rain began to fall. And I realized I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. That night, I received one last message from an unknown number: "You think you won?" Wait. The night I signed the last document, I finally let myself remember that first Christmas Eve, the warmth of the lights, the sound of the fire, and the moment the people I called family decided that punishment was love. I used to think that night broke me. I was wrong. It revealed who they'd always been. They taught me that loyalty meant silence, that obedience was love, that forgiveness required forgetting. But the truth is simpler: love without respect is just control dressed as care. And family? It's not the people who share your blood, it's the ones who never made you beg to exist. My parents believed exile would erase me. Instead, it rebuilt me. The girl they threw out learned how to build her own walls, her own peace, her own name. The courtroom didn't give me freedom, it confirmed what I'd already claimed: my right to choose myself. Now, every time I see a house lit for Christmas, I don't feel the ache anymore. I remember the girl who stood outside hers with nothing, and realized she was already stronger than anyone inside. If you've ever been the one left out, the one blamed, the one made to beg for a place at a table that should have been yours, listen closely: you are not the broken one. You're the survivor of a story that wasn't written for your survival. Justice isn't revenge. It's remembering who you are when the noise fades. So here I am, Isla Noor, 19, no longer anyone's scapegoat. I didn't inherit peace, I built it from the ashes they left me. And I have only one question left. If the truth burned down everything that hurt you, would you mourn the ashes, or dance in the light? Tell me what you'd choose in the comments. And if you've ever rebuilt yourself from betrayal, subscribe, your story deserves to be heard next.